Say my name. I am awake. I am the danger. I am the one who knocks.
Welcome back to yet another episode of Breaking Into Breaking Bad with Clifford and Caleb Humphrey. We are discussing today Season 3, Episode 2, Caballo sin Nombre. Cabes, you took more Spanish than I did. What does this mean?
It's got to mean a horse with no name.
Yeah, horse without name. So before we get into the rest of the show and all that, you want to give us a brief synopsis? What happens in this episode?
Yeah, this one was fun. I'll kind of just break it down through character because it kind of jumped from character to character. It starts off with Walt kind of almost looking like coming to terms with his new situation. And then throughout the episode, you see him kind of go through several different, let's say, hills and valleys throughout the episode. You see Jesse coming around after coming out of his brief stint in rehab. And you also see a big dynamic between Skyler and Walter Jr., who formerly is known by Flynn, which he does not like to go by anymore. And the whole episode is a big leap for the White household in what they're going to be doing in the future. Yeah, the whole dynamic is going to be pretty crazy. This one is kind of setting everything up to be pretty interesting.
Okay, so let's get into the title, Caballo sin Nombre. So, as you pointed out, there's a song that's kind of a theme to this episode. Walt is singing it a couple different times. We hear it on the radio, and it's the song by America called Horse with No Name. But what has that got to do with this episode? Any ideas?
Other than Walt just singing it and listening to it throughout the whole epised? Yeah, I'm not.
Yeah, I mean, in what way is Walt a kind of horse with no name? I don't know. So I came up with two things. Well, so first up, I had to look up I knew the lyrics, but I couldn't remember who sang it. And America doesn't have a lot of hits. But anyway, I found this on the Wikipedia page that I thought was interesting. So the main songwriter, when he was asked, what does this song mean? He said it was a, quote, a metaphor for a vehicle to get away from life's confusion into a quiet, peaceful place. So, the story is, a horse with no name going out in the desert trying to find a peaceful place. The other thing that came to mind is, as you mentioned, Flynn is now rejecting his name and embracing his old identity of Walter Jr. So there's a name situation there, horse with no name. Flynn, he's rejected that now. I don't know if there's any connections that are coming to mind for you for that, but those are the two things that came to my mind. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it. So the introduction has this weird shifting scene of desert scene and weather and clouds kind of moving around. And then we see Walt driving, seems to be deep into the desert. He's on a highway, but he's driving and he gets pulled over, and he acts really strangely. Can we say that Heisenberg emerges in the interaction with the cop?
Yeah, no, I mean, at the beginning, you see Walt just sing along with the song and really looking like he has just come to terms with his situation. Like he's just enjoying the ride. Wherever he was coming from or going, he was just enjoying it. And the minute he got pulled over, you're right, Heisenberg kind of was like, whoa. Do you know who you're talking to, officer?
Right.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, he's demanding mercy. He knows he's guilty, right? He knows that the windshield is, so bad that he should have been pulled over. But he thinks he's owed an exception because the plane crash, broke a lot of windshields, and it was really difficult, and we're all working through it. See, officer, you've got your little ribbon there too. Like, you understand, you should give me a break here. So it's another justice question, and yet Walt is claiming to be the victim. You should give me a break from what the law says I'm owed with this ticket, and he gets really resentful. Really, really resentful. And the cop is like pretty calm. And he's like, I'm going to tell you exactly what's going to happen if you don't get back in your vehicle. And he, sprays Walt with pepper spray, puts him in prison or in jail. And he has to, call Hank to bail him out. And
I mean, I get it. They're both two very good. I guess he doesn't want to be affiliated with Saul in public yet. So that would make sense.
Yeah, right. So maybe he was, right.
And Hank obviously is a good person, high up in the DEA. He's a federal agent, so obviously he would have some pull. So I guess that makes sense that he would use Hank instead of Saul.
So here's a question I thought was an obvious one. Where's he going? Where's Walt driving? Like, he's left the town. He's left Albuquerque. Like, where is he going?
Out into the desert. What else does he have to do? He's living by himself now.
You're saying he just went for a pleasure drive? I don't know. I don't think we ever find out. I think he was just driving to drive at that point. But you're right. It was out in the middle of nowhere. At first, you don't see any of their cars at all. And then, as he's fighting with the cop, you see more cars passing. But yeah. Okay. Anyway, well, I'm just pointing it out. Like, it's kind of a weird thing.
Mm-hmm.
So Jesse gets his 45-day chip of sobriety. We saw that, and so that answers the question we had before. Like, is he really embracing his recovery rehab journey here? Seems like he is, right? He's got that chip. He's holding on to it, and he's proud of it.
Mm-hmm.
And when he goes by and sees how his parents are selling his aunt's home that he was living in, he really does look very different.
I know.
What did they do that was different? But
I was just about to say the same thing. Like, I'm trying to remember what he looked like prior to now, because he looks.
Yeah.
And his dad even mentions this. Like, hey, you're looking pretty healthy. That conversation though with his dad was just so sad, and I could see it from both sides. Like, Jesse's really, like you said, he's in the 45-day, and he's really embracing this new lifestyle. However, his dad has just seen this over and over and over, and it's hard for him to kind of like accept that Jesse's completely transformed. And Jesse even says, like, well, maybe I can come over for dinner sometime, and he was like, sometime. That was just
right. Yeah, it was tough. It was tough. That the bridge is really burned. It's no longer there. One other thing I meant to mention, when Hank is helping bail Walt out of jail, he's talking to the cops, and he says, look, man, if anybody deserves some slack, it's Walt. He's had cancer, his wife's leaving him. It's more of this whole, like, Walt is the victim. Like, he's had all these bad things happen to him, and it's not his fault. And that's a strong contrast with what we know, that a lot of what Walt's experiencing right now is his fault. But everyone else is believing that.
What do you think? Because when Hank was saying all those things, or you hear Hank saying all these things, the camera was focusing in on Walt. I'm wondering what it was that he was going through his mind. Was it embarrassment? Was it shame? Or was it, you guys, like, I'm freaking Heisenberg. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like, I've done this, and this, and this, and this. Like, I was really curious on what it was that he was thinking when they were basically just giving him pity.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. More sort of along the same lines, when Walt is talking with Saul
And Saul's trying to convince him to get back in the game. You got to get out there and cook, right? And what does Walt say? That was really interesting. I can't be the bad guy. And as soon as he said that, I thought of Jesse.
Of course. And that's why he said it. And it also took Saul by surprise, because Saul gave the exact same response that Walt gave to Jesse when Jesse said that. Like, what? What do you mean? You're in the drug business. Like, what do you, you're just now saying I can't be the bad guy?
Yeah.
That's not something you say chapter 10.
That's right. Well, it shows how much in denial Walt is, right?
Yes.
And we know that Jesse, from his experience at that rehab place, right, he came back and said, I've accepted it. I'm the bad guy. Now, he's not just thinking about the drugs. He's also thinking that he's guilty for Jane's death and the plane crash and all of that, which we know is not necessarily the case. But it's just an interesting contrast. Jesse says, I'm the bad guy. I know I am. And Walt's saying, not only am I not the bad guy, but I can't be, I can't be the bad guy. And then I love Saul. Okay, we'll revisit.
Well, yeah, you got to give it to Saul, though. He was doing, he's a heck of a salesman. Like, he really is. The way that he was trying to say, like, listen, you're in the clear. Like, you don't have anything to worry about with Skylar. And I'll give you 3 reasons, this, and that. And and it shows Walt's face, and he's actually considering, like, like, you're probably right. And then the whole thing takes over, basically, well, regardless of that, I can't be the bad guy. So therefore, I don't want to do this. But then right after that, Saul calls Mike and says, I think we have a wife problem.
A wife problem. Yeah, right. Yeah. Well, so indulge me here just a second. There's a question. There's a question underneath here of, like, what makes you bad, right? Is it that he got caught, or is it continuing to do the drugs, right? So if Saul convinced him, it's okay, you can still cook meth, you can be bad, and your wife's not going to leave you, would you do it? Or is it only, is Walt determined only not to do it because he thinks it will definitely prohibit him from being married again, right? And getting back in his good graces with Skylar. So, like, what does Walt mean when he says that? Because he's thinking, I can't be the bad guy because if I'm perceived to be the bad guy by Skylar, she won't want to be with me. But if Saul can convince him, no, you can do this, and she will stay with you, will Walt say, no, I can't do that because that's bad, right? In other words, is it consequentialist? Is it bad because it will lead to bad results, or is it bad because it's bad?
Well, this is what I think is going on with him. I think it's a battle between Walt's ability to try to rationalize every single action he does with his pride. Like Saul even says, you need to get back to doing what you do best.
Right.
And he even says to Jesse, fast forwarding a little bit, that what does he say? It was your former partner builds a business single-handedly. Like he loves the little bit of acclamation that he gets from Saul, because no one else can give him, like, good job, like, you did a good job. Saul is the only person that does that. So he has this battle of the pride and the ego that gets built up from Saul about how good he is at this job, or at meth. Also with his ability to rationalize anything. I mean, 167 some people just died in a plane crash, and he's like, well, there's another plane that happened years ago that killed 600 people. So his ability to rationalize and the ability to not be prideful is
impressive.
Yeah, it's very impressive.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we already mentioned that Flynn declares in anger to Skylar, my name is Walter Jr. Right. It's a pretty big thing, I think, here, right? It signifies I am reclaiming my identity, and who is who is he? He is the son of Walter White, right? He's saying, I'm proud of my dad. He's definitely siding with Walt in all these ways, and he's perceives an injustice against Walt by Skylar.
Yeah, he then drops the B word.
Yeah, now that was really surprising.
Yeah, through Hank by surprise, that's for sure.
Yeah, no, Hank was about to get in his face. Yeah, good on Hank, right? He's a good uncle, I think.
Well, also, like the whole thing with Walt earlier in the episode telling Hank she doesn't want me to see the kids, and that really confused him. And then when he actually not necessarily called Skylar out on it, but just more inquired, saying, hey, it's none of my business. And then she just responded like she does not want to tell him or Marie anything.
Right. Yeah. And then the next scene is Marie and Hank talking, and Hank's like, look, obviously he's having an affair. It's the only thing that can explain this. It's more evidence that Hank cannot imagine that Walt is capable of being Heisenberg. Right? There's no possible way. Right? The only badness he's capable of is an affair. Right? He couldn't do more than that.
Yeah.
Okay. So then let's talk about. So he goes to Saul and gets his money, which is, okay, he's sober now. He wants his money. He needs money. So and then he says, I got a job for you. And he proceeds then through Saul secretly to buy the house from his parents. And when they're negotiating there, I'm waiting for, and at that moment I'd forgotten how much money Jesse had compared to how much the house was worth. But I was waiting for Jesse to offer more than the house was worth to repay his parents. I expected him to be like, you know what? I'm going to secretly repay my parents for all the trauma and all the, pain that I caused them. I'm going to do some good deed for them. What do they call it in recovery? Like, make restitution, I'm going to make up for it, And what does he do? He screws them. He gets the house for half of what they're asking.
Well, I will say, go ahead. The rub it in part. Yeah.
He relishes walking in the house. He made sure to get there before they left so they could see him. And he dangles the keys and say, I bought the house. And I just thought, my gosh, like this guy is really living in resentment. He's taking pure pleasure out of causing harm, pain to his parents. And I'm thinking, wait a minute, like, why did you do that? You could have moved to New Zealand like you had dreamed of doing with Jane. You could have moved anywhere. And now you'd
be a bush pilot.
Now you've made a real estate investment in Albuquerque. Like, why do that? There's no reason for him to stay there. And then that house, like the only reason he did it was to get at his parents, which to me is like, okay, well, he's obviously not embracing his recovery rehab journey. He's seeking to cause harm. He still sees himself as a victim, and he's going to get even. Dang it! When his dad refuses to let him back into the family, he's like, "Well, I'm going to show you." I just couldn't believe it. it was very surprising.
So let me give a different.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
A different side. Just from watching this a couple times, 2 or 3 times before. So if you recall in prior seasons, do you remember who owned the house?
His aunt, who died of cancer.
Correct. And do you remember that Jesse had mentioned that he was the only one that took care of her?
Yeah, but we know he didn't really take care of her.
Well, we don't. Okay, right. So it's up to the opinion of the watcher. But he had mentioned that he was there and he had washed her hair, like done all this stuff to take care of her. And that is backed up by his knowledge of cancer when he's talking to Walt about
That's
everything.
true.
He's like,
That's
it's
true.
already in your lymph nodes. Like he was, to me, he was very involved with his aunt. He lived there afterwards. They didn't, according to the picture that Jesse said, regardless, maybe he was high and he was just saying things, but he had mentioned like they weren't there at all for her, and he was. So he feels a sense of entitlement to that home, and he was actually in that home for a long period of time after the aunt passed away. Even though they had rights to it, they kind of just didn't acknowledge him at all. And then when he showed up 45 days sober, and they just didn't really want him to come into the house. They didn't, like, he just felt rejected. And so, yeah, in a sense, it was like a revenge, but that there is that one angle saying that he feels validated in doing this because of what he did for his aunt who owned the house, and he was the only one that was living there after her. So,
okay, so
this
is interesting. So we're playing the lawyer game. So you're defending him. Okay, granted, I think you're right. I think there is evidence to suggest that he did treat his aunt really well, and that he's owed her house in some way as a recompense. Probably not the whole house, but let's say in the scales of justice, right? Like he's owed something. Okay, let's put what's on the other side of the scales. Okay, how much pain and harm to his parents and family has he caused? And let's compare those. Like,
we don't know the full picture of what pain he's caused. They've said it's been a lot of pain, but like we just don't know. Like,
well, we assume his parents are decent people. They tried, many times, like Jane's dad to Jane, right, to help, and they let him come in, and they said, we're not going to do this again. We've tried this, and we've got to protect him from his brother. We've got to protect his little brother, and it's already obvious that he's had an influence on his little brother, right? I think the pain that he's caused his family far outweighs the benefit that he gave to his aunt. I mean, we can move on, but
yeah, ultimately, I think he was not going to pull the trigger on wanting to try to buy the house until his dad just shrugged him off.
No, so that's the point. That's the point. Regardless of how much he was owed the house, the fact that he did that strictly to get at his dad tells me he's not thinking, what's in Jesse's best interest right now? What should I do for Jesse? All he can think about is, how can I cause some pain to my parents? Right? Like, that's kind of sick. And here's the main point. We were praising Jesse earlier because he was living in self-knowledge of, I'm the bad guy. Okay? You've owned that. Now you can move forward in your life and make and become a good guy, or at least a not bad guy. Right? He has that humility, which is self-knowledge. But here, he's showing that his vision is clouded by resentment. And all he can think about is not what's in his best interest or what's good for him, but only his whole decision-making thinking is just swirling around his parents. It's not around his own what's good for Jesse.
I will say that decision, although it's probably true, I think he, just like Walt, rationalized it because he's already accepted that he's the bad guy. Therefore, that decision probably comes pretty easy.
That's a very good point. Yeah. And it's also just very human, I mean, it's a very human thing to do, to be consumed.
One other thing it was pretty interesting to watch is when Jesse comes into Saul's office, Saul does not treat him like an equal partner whatsoever. He goes, "Oh man, your partner, It's just like he's there. He just won't get back to work. He's single-handedly built this business, and he said all these things that old Jesse would have been like, hello, I'm 50-50 partner. I was there through everything with him. What are you talking about? But he didn't even say that. But when he says, do you want a job? I think that's when then Saul was finally like, oh, you are a paying customer. You're not just a tag along to Walt.
You're right. He treats him as a little kid, sort of.
Yeah.
And then that's a good point. Yeah. And then he becomes an equal when he says, oh, I'll pay you to help me with this. Yeah, that's right. That's a good point. Okay. There's this weird scene where Walt is walking back to his apartment where we find Walter Jr., right? What is up with Walt fishing the bandage out of the pool?
I was trying to think about that, and I saw it. I replayed it, and I was just like, what does this have to do? The only thing I could think of is when he was cleaning out the money from his pool.
Yep.
And there was some kind of like very similar to the cutting the crusts off the bread.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Like he just has a habit of when he sees something, he just can't, he automatically has a picture of something he's done before.
Well, it's sort of OCD on one
Correct.
hand, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, I mean, let's think about this. Like, it's not his pool, right? Like,
yeah.
When he's cutting the crust off the sandwich, like, okay, this sandwich, he's gonna like make it fancy, which is weird because it's PB&J. But he's gonna clean the community pool, But like in a way, it's like I said with the sandwich, it's him kind of trying to control something in his life. And if he can't control Skylar, dang it, he's gonna keep that pool clean. These kids, they're putting they're leaving their bandages in the pool, right? He can kind of control that. And then the next scene is him trying to do what? Manipulate things with Skylar, right? He is way overly like a kind of submissive when Walter Jr. comes back. He immediately called him, well, Skylar, oh yeah, no, I told him he shouldn't be here. No, of course we're coming right over, and then he shaves.
Yeah, he was a kiss ass.
He was a kiss ass, yes, that's right. But he's clearly thinking, and then he shows up with the pizza, right? And he's clearly thinking, I am going to impress Skylar by bringing Walter Jr. home right away, by showing how amiable I am and helpful I am, and I know what her wishes are, and I'm going to follow her wishes, right? And I think my favorite line in this episode was, "I got dipping sticks."
Yeah, dipping sticks was like, come on, you can't say no to that, Skylar. Like,
I mean, that was the last thing. That was his last straw, right? When she's like, "No, you're not." And then he's like, "No, but I did this, and we can do that." And then the last argument he makes for why she should let him in is, "I got dipping sticks."
Oh, good point, Walter. Like, come on in. Let's forget all about this.
Yeah, right. But it shows like how great of a length he went to, because when he went to the pizza place, they were like, "Do you want dipping sticks?" And he's like, "Let me think about this. Will that maybe help Scott?" "Yes, give me the dipping sticks." You know what I mean? Like, he's going to such great lengths to try and get back in, which explains why, drum roll, he throws the pizza on the roof. In utter exasperation, because all of his efforts to manipulate her failed.
So
talk to us about the pizza, Capes.
So the pizza, there's a lot of backstory to this pizza thing. So that was done on the very first take. He did that. I don't even know if it was like that was the whole point. I didn't know if it was just throw the pizza and wherever the pizza goes, the pizza goes. But the fact that he threw it perfectly, and I noticed this pizza was not cut at all. It was still in its circular,
Yeah.
Like normally they're already cut in slices, right? But yeah, this one was his first go, and they said, perfect. We're gonna leave it like that. And this is where it gets funny. So this show stopped filming in 2013, and for years, people were driving up to that house and throwing pizzas on the roof. And there's someone that lives there, right? They just rented it out to the studio to film in. but they ended up putting a fence around that one property. And, it's funny. I think Dad's actually been to that property, which I'm super jealous of. Yeah. Wow. He took a picture of it. And
so normally there's a no trespassing or something sign.
Right.
This one has no throwing pizza sign.
I think it's the only house in that area that has a fence around it. So it looks kind of weird. But yeah, people were going around trying to throw pizza on the roof, which I'm not gonna lie, does sound pretty tempting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just to say it, even though that sounds really, really silly.
It's funny, it's like a $20 thrill. Buy the pizza.
And then to see the pizza later on when you see Mike show up and his face, like, what in the world?
Yeah, right. The cheese started to slide.
Great. Anyways.
Yeah. A final point I meant to make about Jesse, and I'm sorry because we already beat that horse pretty badly, but I wanted to add that when they're packing up and his parents are complaining about the price that they got, he says that they broke even because they had to put all that money into the renovations. And we know what happened with the bathtub upstairs. And, there's some serious renovation work had to happen. But they say Jake had his heart set on space camp. And it just reminded me, Jesse's decision to screw his parents over also led to his brother Jake, whom he loves, not getting to do the thing that he wanted to do that summer. That's the lengths that he went to, and the extra harm he's causing. That's
true. I will say that
he probably didn't mean to hurt.
I don't think the space camp was something that he knew about. So,
you don't think so?
if he had, he might have.
Well, that's the part of the point, though, is that he's hurting. His actions are hurting people in ways he didn't consider. Okay, so when Saul calls Mike and says we got a wife problem, I'm not exactly sure what the nature of a wife problem is, but Mike shows up. He's like, "Oh yeah, obviously I need to bug the house." What problem is that going to solve? I don't understand. He's going to hear what. I mean, maybe we have to watch the next episode.
Well, think about it. Saul sees something in Walter, and he uses Mr. Fix-It, Mike, to give him intel that he could sell to Walter to make him to manipulate, to make himself feel very valuable.
I see.
And obviously, Mike is good at what he does. He seems very, very competent in everything. And that we see at the end of this episode saved Walt's life because Mike was just happened to be there.
Yeah. Okay. So the Mexican cartel assassins show up, and I got a lot of questions. Why the eyeball? What the heck's going on with the eyeball? Why would Walt have?
Well, let's back up. So we know now that those two brothers are Salamancas. They go in and they see Hector Salamanca at the nursing home, right?
Tio.
So Tio, yes, right. Even though they don't say anything, they just find a game, and it's great. So we know that they're part of the Salamanca crime family, correct? Tio is still upset about.
Yeah,
Tuco
how does Tio know Walter White's name? I don't.
Well, remember he was there. He grabbed them, and Tuco had them at the house in the desert. He had their
IDs. Yeah, that's right.
Right. So there's a good chance that came about.
Yeah, and and when he's telling them the name, he's like breathing heavy, and he's like fuming,
very intense. Right.
He's really angry.
So we first
the last time we saw him, remember, they thought he was gonna spill to the feds, and he didn't, right? Because
he spilled something, just not
right. But remember, they said he's old school, like he's never gonna. But we're reminded, he's not gonna tell the feds because he's a criminal of principle, I guess. But he is still very upset at Walt, and now he's going to help get him assassinated.
Yeah.
Okay, so
to answer your question about the eyeball, he first sees the eyeball in the skimmer of the pool. He pulls it out. Why he kept it, like there's some of me that thinks it's almost like a serial killer that takes something like with him from their victims. Maybe that had to do something with it, or he just saw it as like an eyeball. It's pretty interesting. But one of the brothers thought it was interesting too, to look at it and then threw it back, and not in its right place though.
Yeah. Well, okay. I think there's more to the eyeball than meets the eye. Sort of there at this point, but we'll have to see what comes of it. So now I got this. Then I got really confused. So Mike calls Gus's
number
guy,
2.
Yeah,
guy.
It's number 2. It wasn't immediately clear to me that Mike would have that guy's number.
So do you remember when Walt was talking to Saul about this opportunity, and he goes, so you know him? He goes, let's just say I know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy.
Okay.
So Mike is the guy that Saul uses, but Mike knows a guy who knows the guy. So Mike knows the guy that he called, who obviously works for Gus.
Okay, so we're making this is the thing, is we're realizing there are connections that we didn't know about before. So now we know that Mike is the guy that Saul knows, and Mike knows the guy who knows Gus. Okay.
Correct.
So, but then somebody on Gus's end texts the Mexican brothers with the word pollo, and now we know, okay, somehow the Gustavo crime family is connected to the Salamanca crime family, or maybe it's the same family. Also, why would he have texted him that one word? Because if I'm Mexican and I say the word pollo, I'm just thinking chicken.
Yeah.
And it's not like he needs, why would they need to, and I know these people are men of, a few words, but why doesn't he just say, hey, don't kill Walt, or, don't kill the chicken or something. I mean, like, that word is so, we've only ever seen it, right, when it means, hey, Walt, come to Pollos Hermanos to meet Gus to talk about something, right?
Right.
But they read that as we need to go there right now and not kill Walt. There's so much information that they were supposed to have read into that text. I don't understand.
Right. I don't think we're meant to at this point.
Okay, so we're meant to be a little confused. I'm a little confused. It just wasn't clear to me.
Well,
those guys,
mission accomplished. Yeah.
Those guys are probably feeling family loyalty, like Tio, and like we're gonna get even. And remember that whole, like, they're crawling on the dirt through the thing, and they see Walt's face, and they're like, we're gonna get this guy. Like, we're gonna kill him, and then we're gonna go to Pollos Hermanos, right? I guess they could have easily said, "Oh yeah, we didn't get your message in time. Like, we'd already killed him." It's just, now these guys, as we've already noted, are devout. I mean, they're robotic in their obedience and their devotion to the cause that they're serving. We don't know what it is, but it's so. On one hand, I could have seen them. No. That means we're nothing's going to stop us from killing this guy. On the other hand, it could mean no. When the powers that be tell us to do a thing, we do it, and the powers that be told us pollo.
Right.
So
yeah, and we also got to talk about whatever snapped in Walt's mind to be like, you know what, I'm going home, and he crawled underneath the house just to get in. He brings all his luggage in.
Oh, that's right. Wait, what was the reason? I thought it was to get his money. That's right. I thought maybe he had stashed his money there, but he had given his money to Hank. Remember, $500,000 is in that bag.
Yeah, no, that was just Hank driving him to his new apartment.
So what is going on there? It must have been that Walt was thinking, you know what? Dang it, it's my house, and I'm gonna take a shower.
So he woke up in his house, like in his underwear, hungover, probably with like what was it? Popcorn all over his face.
Yeah, really gross. Yeah.
And then she leaves him a voicemail that says, I don't know what you're trying to pull, like stay out of this. And he says, restrain this. And that snapped. It snapped in his head.
So she said basically stay away from the house. And he said, okay, I'm going to go to the house.
Well, because she said, I'm going to give you a restraining order if you do this again.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's when in his mind, he was like, I call, right? Let's figure this out. Because this life is not worth it anymore. At this point, he was like, I'm going, whatever happens, happens.
Wow. Well, he's making some pretty bold decisions at this point.
Right.
And he seems to have given up his whole, like, well, maybe if I'm super nice and, I stay away and then I take Walter Jr. back right away, she'll do what I want. Like he's no longer doing the, like, let's see if we can woo her by pressing her with how nice we are.
He's done with that.
Yeah. He's going to control things through other means, through force.
So yeah, next episode is going to be pretty intense.
Yeah, I think so. Want to watch it?
It's almost midnight. Yes.
Yeah.
You got anything else? Nice. All right. Thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, share, subscribe. You can find these episodes on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and you can follow and contact us on Twitter and Patreon at Breaking Into BB. We will see you next time as we break into another episode of Breaking Bad.
Ba-da-bum.